It's time for us to delve into what's making the headlines for you in the newspapers, and joining us to do that, superstar broadcaster and reporter, Kwaku Afari's with us. How are you, Kwaku?
I'm good, thank you guys. How are you doing?
Yeah,
good.
really, really well. Thank you. Especially after last night's football.
You're beaming.
I am. It makes a difference if your team wins, doesn't it? And you have to work the next day and talk about it. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about in the papers. Manchester City, lots being written about them today.
Yeah, it's a huge game tomorrow against Liverpool. And yeah, that's the story dominating most of the back pages. Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp have been having their say before the game. And Jurgen Klopp basically says that his Liverpool side can't keep up with Man City. Daily Telegraph headline, it's impossible to compete with City. I like Daily Mirror's headline, Spoil Sport by Dave Maddock. But the article I want to concentrate on is in the Daily Mail, We Can't Keep Up by Dominic King. And there are some interesting numbers. And basically outlines that in the last 4 seasons between Liverpool and City, it's been pretty neck and neck. So over 152 games, Liverpool garnered 357 points and City 358 points. But now we see the golf in class and the golf in just the quality of squads right now. Obviously, Haaland's been added to Man City. He's taken them to another level. And we do forget the fact that Arsenal are actually top of the league. But I think in everybody's minds, Man City are the clear favourites. And Liverpool, their struggles have been well documented this season. Obviously, a bit of respite in Europe. They won 7-1 against Rangers. A not very good Rangers side, though. But I think they could be in for a hiding on the weekend against Man City just because of how good Man City have looked this season.
Hiding?
Oh, no.
Did winning in the FA Cup against them last year.
They
winning
did.
The Community Shield.
The Community Shield, I don't necessarily
Hiding's
think...
a bit harsh.
I think they could be. I think that's what
When
Liverpool
you
fans
say that,
were
so what does that
scared.
mean to you? As in, what are you thinking score-wise?
I think anything at Anfield, I think a 3-goal deficit is a hiding. Yeah, and I feel like they could be on... It depends on how Liverpool approach the game. Obviously, we saw how kamikaze it was against Arsenal last week in terms of the setup of the team, and they kind of went for it, and Arsenal took advantage of that. And I think Man City have just got too many players that can hurt Liverpool, and also Liverpool got a lot of injuries as well.
I think there's a stat, isn't there, going round about Liverpool haven't lost at Anfield in front of a crowd for something like five and a half years.
Yeah.
I mean, that is incredible as a stat. So,
Well, look, not so long ago, Virgil van Dijk...
That's in the league, I should point out. Yeah.
Not so long ago, Virgil van Dijk was, rightly so, one of the best centre-halves in the world. He needs to show that this weekend because Virgil's not played to what we know he's capable of. He's coming up against the most dangerous forwards in world football. So Virgil needs to show it this weekend for Liverpool to have a chance. They can't... Let's get it right. And you mentioned the word hiding. If Liverpool defend like they have since the start of the season, they will get a hiding.
Yeah.
So something has to be a lot different tomorrow.
That's it. And obviously you've seen Klopp change around his system a little bit in recent weeks. And credit to Virgil van Dijk, when these two sides did meet in the Community Shield at the beginning of this season, he didn't give Haaland a sniff.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to see that Van Dijk. We're going to have to see him back to his best. Obviously, they're going to be short-handed with the absence of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Joel Matip. But yeah, Liverpool, it'll be interesting to see how they play it because for morale, it wouldn't be good to see them get smashed by one of their greatest rivals over the last couple of years.
Well, they've smashed each other over the years as well. You know, they have done that to each other. One of the City players, Phil Foden, 200 grand a week.
I'd love a bit of that. Just give me 1 week of his earnings and I'll be all right for the rest of my life. Phil Foden, he's netted a new contract worth over 200k a week, and it's much deserved for Phil Foden, who's started the season very, very well for Man City. Again, I suppose we can't not mention Erling Haaland. He's a force multiplier, and I think he can see the confidence of his teammates around him. And Phil Foden's already registered 6 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League this season, and he's well on course to break any or match any stats that he's reached last season or the seasons before. So I think Phil Foden is going to be Man City's one of their most integral players going forward, and this contract is a reward for that.
Do you think that he's underpaid? I'm saying that because I know of another England player that's a very similar age who's on a bigger contract than him.
Yeah.
And Phil, Reece James.
Yeah.
Reece James apparently is on 280. Now, Phil Foden is on 200. I actually think...
What's 80 grand between two friends?
I just
That's
look.
all right.
I'm being a bit, flippant there when I'm talking about. But he's worth, they're getting him, I think, cheap for what Phil Foden's going to become in the next 5 years.
100%.
He's going to sign a new contract 18 months, 2 years down the line, without a doubt.
Well, definitely. And City have set their stall out as well. If you believe some of the reports, Erling Haaland's on 850 grand a week. So,
but is this a £200,000 a week? But there are bonuses on top, which could take him to above Reece James, for example.
I mean, they're ridiculous numbers, and I'm being a bit flippant in the way I'm explaining. But football is crazy, and anyone who thinks Erling Haaland come to Man City on the cheap is so far wrong.
No.
Because they got him cheap, as in the transfer fee. But he wasn't cheap for everything else that came in his contract.
Exactly, and Phil Foden and Haaland are similar ages as well. And the fact that he is a local boy and the fact that he's done what he's done at such a young age, like you say, Cass, I think in 18 months' time he's probably in line for a contract upgrade because he's just been so good for them.
Yeah, and as you sort of mentioned, that sort of partnership he's forming with Haaland, I mean, they've talked about it as well. They're building a communication between each other. And it's proving very fruitful for Manchester City. You mentioned Reece James. Bad injury in midweek.
Yeah, my heart sunk. Obviously, I'm watching Chelsea beat AC Milan pretty comfortably in San Siro. But then when Reece James went down, I think if you're an England fan as well, your heart kind of sunk. But yeah, a lot of the papers are covering this. The Sun, Croc, Reece and Qatar Fear by Andrew Dillon. And Times, injured James could be out of the World Cup by Molly Hudson. And this is... the irony of it, in terms of England fans, decrying the fact that Gareth Southgate selects 4 right-backs, and this weekend we're only going to see one of them play since Trent's out, Reece James is injured, and Kyle Walker's just undergone groin surgery. It's touch and go for England in that position. Obviously, Ben White wasn't selected in the last squad, and so it'll be interesting to see what Gareth Southgate does do in the World Cup if Reece James and Kyle Walker are both out.
I was going to say, add on to that, that you're talking about the number of injuries with Kyle Walker and Reece James, and he established himself as the number one, really, didn't he, Reece James?
Yeah.
He did.
That has sort of become over the last year that he is the first choice. Now, we still don't know the full extent of his injury, do we?
No.
So we're still waiting on that.
It's knee ligament damage. When he first was assessed, there was hope that it wasn't as bad as first seen. We saw pictures of him on a commercial flight, on an EasyJet flight. I've been on EasyJet flights. The leg room on there is not great, so I'm not too sure why he was on the EasyJet flight. But yeah, there's fears that he could be out beyond the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see what Gareth Southgate does do. Kieran Trippier is obviously still fit. He's a man that scored a goal in the World Cup semi-final for Gareth Southgate, so he's well versed on the international stage, but he's not necessarily first choice.
As you say, Reece James, it felt had been the preferred choice for Gareth Southgate. If, and it is a big if still, he doesn't make it to Qatar, what do England miss by him not being there?
Well, my one question, and Quako's a Chelsea fan, so he'd probably appreciate this. I always felt if Reece improved defensively, he's a much better player, because we know offensively he can get in great positions. He's a great deliverer of a ball. If he improved like he did, he could recover brilliantly. And when he recovers, he's so quick and strong. Reece is a great outlet on the right side. And they'll miss that because he can do both. He can go back and front now. He can go backwards and forwards. And I think Trippier's not far off, and he is absolute debutant. If he needed to be, he could be that. But Reece had really, for me in the last year, really nailed down that number one spot at right back or wing back.
It's interesting because I know last season, when you look at Chelsea's season, got off to a great start with both Ben Chilwell and Reece James, and then both got injured, and it felt as though that kind of coincided with this loss of form for Chelsea. In terms of the impact it will make for Chelsea going forward, maybe the fact that there is a World Cup might help him, depending on how serious his injury is. But in terms of your own thoughts on him missing now the next few games anyway?
I think it will be difficult for Chelsea because the drop-off to the next person up is quite vast. Obviously, Azpilicueta has been a great servant for Chelsea over the last decade, but he's not Reece James going forward or defensively at this stage now. We've seen Ruben Loftus-Cheek be shifted out to right wing-back position, but I don't necessarily think that suits him to the ground. So it will be difficult for Chelsea. It's an interesting conundrum for Graham Potter because I think that the drop-off for that position is probably the biggest drop-off in the squad. So hopefully for Chelsea fans and England fans, Reece James's injury is not as bad as people think.
Game Day Breakfast with Natalie Sawyer and Tony Cascarino. Saturday mornings from 6 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.